Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Gibran Septian Al-Haswi and I will presentation from my group, Philosophy Group 3. Okay. Knowledge for its own sake. According to Hirsch, or at least the Hirsch of the 1960s and 1970s, knowledge is subsumed under 7 different forms. These are mathematics, physical science, knowledge of persons, literature and the fine arts, morals, religion, and philosophy. What distinguishes one from another, according to Hirsch, is the fact that each has its own unique set of concepts. For example, number in mathematics, gravity in science, figurative drawing in art, God in religion, wicked in morals, and so on. 2. Each form has its unique logical structure. 3. Each form has its own test for truth. For example, the truth of the proposition that 2 8 16 is established is an entirely different way from that required to determine the temperature at which water boils at sea level. Hirsch does not say that such forms should be equated with school subjects, and he allows that certain subjects, geography for instance, might well have a place on the curriculum that are themselves something he calls fields. Geography employs mathematical concepts as well as concepts from history and the physical science, but it is not a distinct form of knowledge. While there is indeed something logically peculiar in asking the question, why pursue knowledge, while refusing to accept that in so doing one is duly committed to whatever it is for which one is seeking a justification. It is far from obvious that this argument is sufficient to demonstrate that the forms of knowledge as outlined by Hirsch should be pursued in schools. After all, some might argue schools should be principally concerned with the teaching of skills, such as how to get on with people, swimming or speaking Spanish, rather than filling children's minds with propositional knowledge. Knowing that such and such is the case, children should leave school with skills that are likely to be of use to them in later life. They should know how to do such and such, in whatever way the advocate of knowledge for knowledge's sake might meet his objection. There is a hidden assumption on which such a viewpoint rests, and that is not knowing this is of some benefit. Some philosophers of education have expressed reservations not only about Hirsch's analysis of knowledge, but have cast serious doubt on the extent to which we are entitled to restrict the notion of liberal education to something as narrow and restrictive as being initiated into forms of understanding which are primarily intellectual. From C. Martin, 1981. There is more to a person than her intellect. She has an emotional life, engaged in all kinds of physical activities, and it's confronted with all sorts of practical problems. She does not exist in some kind of ivory tower, pursuing the truth in the manner of the proverbial professor. And what about those who, for whatever reason, fail the initiation test? Are we to consign them to join the queue with other barbarians at the gate? Knowledge for knowledge's sake may well withstand the charge of elitism, but it certainly has an elitist whiff about it. For this reason, it is doubtful that it will suffice as an answer to our question as we go in the 21st century. We therefore need to consider other claims and to address some of the recent debates relating to the competing merits of liberal versus vocational education. Before returning to the question of what constitutes an appropriate education for a whole person, if, as will be argued, schools should be concerned with the education of persons, we need a rather more generous interpretation of events than that provided so far. Education for work. It is not uncommon to hear people justify schooling as a means to obtaining qualification. As a passport to a good job, if present, they will often equate the notion of good job in monetary terms, whereby a high salary enables one to purchase lot of things as a means to becoming happy. Apart from the questionable assumption that owning lots of things is likely to make one happy, there is the additional presupposition that happiness is the ideal state to be in and something to which everything else is but a means. We shall pursue this line of talk later in the chapter. In order to expose its shortcomings, surely they insist, if schooling is to have any relevance at all, it has relevance insofar as it prepares people for the real world, the world of employment where they can earn a living. Book learning is all very well, but it doesn't exactly butter the parsnips. While it would be naive to pretend that all pupils, especially those in the latter stage of secondary education, willingly engage in study for its own sake, we should hesitate before concluding that some kind of vocational training, motivating as it might well be, is the universal panacea for the disgruntled student, or those who are charged with the task of educating her. While there is no doubt that if we were to have a separate provision for the academy, to begin with, the solution is open to all kind of manipulative. Excuse me. To begin with, the solution is open to all kinds of manipulative possibilities. How, for instance, are the vocational got to be identified? Someone might well be turned off by science and history and be an utter nonsense in class, but it does not follow that she will be better off as a person by preparing for a job of work. First, there are questions to do with the kind of work for which she is expected to be trained. Is it boring or useless work, in the sense that she is helping to make something for which nobody has any real needs, as well as having deleterious consequence for the environment or the economy of a developing country? Does it prevent of frustrated opportunities for the development and exercise of imagination or her opportunities for personal fulfillment associated with family life, or the cultivation of friendships, appreciation of the arts and natural beauty, not to mention any talent or enthusiasm she might have for sport, music, cookery, gardening, or philosophy? To presume that people can be created like apple at such a young age, before they are in position to appreciate much in the way of significant alternatives open which rational choice depends, especially when their critical powers of evaluation are substantially underdeveloped, is to assume too much. Again, so much work that is done in our society is undertaken with the sole intention of making profits for those who are already privileged and wealthy. Unless we conceive of vocational education in more liberal terms than the association with vocational training, we are in conspiring to get people to accept with equanimity the non-egalitarian and oppressive associated with so many jobs in modern Britain, selling children short. Teachers could respond in a variety of ways, from burying their heads in the sand, pretending that it is their business to educate, nothing more, nothing less, to actively preparing pupils for the world of work. But that what such preparation entail? It is all too apparent that many youngsters will find themselves in heteronomous work with limited prospects. What will count as an appropriate form of preparation? It may well require that teachers find themselves in the disagreeable position of having to convey the importance of values to which so many employers are attached, such as deference and obedience, values which they themselves might find morally repugnant. One could hardly call it profession in the requisite sense if, as workers, they prove to be dysfunctional in the workplace. And how is such now knowing compatible with the law-table education aims associated with critical thinking, personal autonomy, self-respect, and enthusiasm for activities done for their own sake, or are these aims appropriate only for the academic scene? Okay, that's from me, Gibran Septan Ahasi. Correct me if I'm wrong. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.